Well, Jacob Imam, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It's great to be with you.
Well, maybe just tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. You are the founder of St. Joseph the Worker College there in Steubenville, Ohio. Maybe just, your elevator pitch. What is St. Joseph the Worker College and who is Jacob Imam?
The College of St. Joseph the Worker is an institute of higher education that simultaneously trains students in the Catholic intellectual tradition to earn their BA degrees, while also training them in the skilled trades like carpentry, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, so as to earn their journeyman's card. And because you get paid to train in the skilled trades, our students will graduate debt-free, financially net positive, instead of up to their eyeballs in debt, as so often happens today. I came at this from a standpoint of a happy academic and was hoping that I could maybe give a contribution to the models out there for higher education, so as to not have as in debt students, and also not as without as many professors that have a guilty conscience as well. So that's what we're trying to do here in the beautiful Ohio Valley.
Definitely. And one of the things that really strikes me, and as I was learning more about your college, this approach, I feel like, is so needed in so many different areas of our life, where it seems like we have such an atomized life, you could put it that way, where everything is compartmentalized. It's like we have to work out because we don't get physical activity now. We're at a desk all day, right? You look at everything in our foods, it's all these chemicals. It's like, why not just go back to the whole food? You can get all your vitamins and minerals from, fruits and meats and all those kinds of things. And with college, one of the things that was just like really frustrating when I went to college, I went for broadcast journalism, and I would say maybe it was 3 classes that I was like, those are really good. Those are teaching me what I'm doing. I learned the things in those classes that really helped me today. But these other classes, you're learning about just random stuff, and you're sitting in a classroom with 30 other people, and it's very, it's not efficient at all. But what it seems like St. Joseph the Worker does is you're looking at not just teaching someone one particular thing, but you're actually looking at their whole life, and how can we build these students into successful human persons, rather than just focusing on maybe just one tiny aspect of someone's life. So how is this maybe a more holistic approach than we see in college today?
We really think that the great divorce between white collar and blue collar is a false one, and that we need to call a bluff on this false dichotomy between the head and the hands. And so when we think of as the cultivation of the human person, that needs to be intellectual, it needs to be spiritual, it needs also to be material. You look back at the ancient world, and we can kind of get into the details of what their social order looked like, but one thing that you saw praised were the liberal arts, and rightly so, but those were, of course, juxtaposed next to the servile arts, and it's, that term was important. Those terms are, it's like one was for a free man, one was for a slave, right? The free man should not, in some cases in the ancient world, legally could not engage in manual labor. So it was this incredible revelation to the world when God shows up, the most free of all of us, in the form of a slave, as St. Paul says. And he says, and this is, not just some nicety where he came in with less privileges, but he literally came in the form that the ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks attributed to servility. Came in the form of a carpenter. And so when Christ gives us that glimmer of hope of what true humanity is, and that the life of the worker can be not only included in it, but it actually was the archetypal form that Christ took, then that changed everything. And so even into the Middle Ages, as we find the origins of higher education, you see this breakdown between the more theoretical sciences like metaphysics the more pragmatic sciences like economics, and then the manual sciences as well, like carpentry, like masonry. But they were all considered to be different arts under the same umbrella. The question is, what part of the soul, what part of the human person was being developed? Is it their mind or is it the hands? They're attached to the same body, right? They're part of the same human, right? And both of those need to be elevated and sanctified so as to enjoy the celestial heights, but also to help cultivate the kingdom of God, actually a more ideal Christian society here and now. And so there was a very major flip that the medievals had. And I think they really did have a good insight into reality. I think the pagans, the ancients, with their slaves, I think they were wrong. Hot take, I know. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at college today, it seems like it's completely separate. You might have the sports that kind of get into some of the physical activity, I guess, but then pretty much everything else is intellectual, and there's not really hands-on learning. And I think that's a fallacy that a lot of people fall into and I think it was Edward Fazer who put it this way, a great Catholic intellectual in our space, and he was saying how we're in kind of a funny situation where we're both spiritual and we're physical beings, right? So sometimes we can emphasize the spiritual a lot, or we can emphasize the physical a lot. You see people going, 100% focused on nutrition and fitness and everything, and then you have the people just focused on, just learning as much as they can and everything like that, and neglecting their physical health and everything like that. But then also there's, really doing things with your hands, which kind of brings both together. I guess, can you talk a little bit more about this, like the need nowadays to really bring those two things together? Because I think so many of us are missing that today.
Right. Well, I just take the example of the sports for a moment, and I love sports. This is not a criticism of them, but they're leisure activities, right? I mean, there's certain rules and regulations that you follow during the time that you're playing, but then as soon as the game's over or the match is over, then those rules don't apply to the rest of life, right? And so that is a major distinction between the way in which you can physically cultivate yourself in a way that applies only to a short period of time in one's week versus to cultivating yourself spiritually or physically in such a way as that you're cultivating skills that directly benefit and permanently affect the life of somebody else, which is, of course, what happens in the skilled trades. So both are good, both are worth developing for different reasons, but that is a clear distinction between the two of them. I think a big misunderstanding in the blue collar trades is that people don't understand how intellectual they are. Right? There's a big reason why you find the degradation of the blue collar trades, and that's because of automation that occurred over the last 200 years in the industrial life of America. Now we've sent it overseas, but we think about producing cars, right? Ford's assembly line, is that wasn't intellectual work, right? So we would call that blue collar, and we've just kind of conflated these two. But that's very different than the life of a carpenter who is there designing, having to check and often correct the work of architects and engineers and saying that's actually not structural, that won't work. And then taking from the design standpoint to then applying it in real life and creatively having to think through solutions of how to take an idea that you just have in your mind and then manifest it into the world. That begins as an intellectual endeavor and only finishes as a physical one. And so it's very, it's when we talk about blue collar as a whole, there's a large spectrum underneath there of just how intellectual and just how creative a worker needs to be per each task. And so when we've chosen the trades that we've done, we've certainly tried to choose the ones that are more creative. And as you think about this too, I mean, we often praise the white collar job, but for a lot of us, we don't get to see a change in the world as a result of our labor each day. You're sitting in front of a camera, or you're sitting in front of a computer, and you might have built some beautiful models and exquisite sheets, but at the end of the day, you close the computer and it's the same. Somebody asks you, what did you do that today? And you think, I got to remember, right? The tradesman doesn't have that same problem, because what he is doing, the intellectual work that he's doing, isn't all of a sudden manifest and made incarnate in this world. And so that he can, at the end of the day, take a step back and admire actually what he's done in a very direct and very meaningful way. So I think that is wonderful for many people. Obviously, everyone has their own personal apostolates that they need to receive and follow and actualize. But I do think that there is almost this inorganic movement away from the skilled trades, and the demeaning of the blue collars is actually leaving behind a really wonderful way of life for people as well. I mean, that certainly is almost like a balm to many of the anxieties that we feel today. Like, there's not a real confidence that we have because we don't get to see the fruit of our labor manifested into the world. I think that the trades also have, a balm to our anxiety that we're feeling on the financial side, so far as you don't have to get up to your eyeballs in debt. You get paid to train. You're in a high demand occupation where you can continue to provide for your family well and not be suffering under the weight of so many hours. I think there's the benefits of also living in what I like to call an oblique technological world, where you don't really understand how the things around you work, right? I mean, tell me, how does your phone work, right? How does your computer work? We have no idea. But as soon as you start to enter into the life of the trades and start to learn how certain technologies function and operate and the logic behind them, and you're given then not just the knowledge of how they work, but also the knowledge of how to figure it out, that's a balm, on this anxiety in our overly technologized world as well. I think we can keep talking about different solutions or different issues that this helps solve. But of course, I just want to emphasize that I'm defending the trades, as a whole, or theoretically, and I just suspect that more people are actually called to find their life in them than we might say today.
These are silver bars. Silver, in many languages, actually means money. You may have noticed inflation a little bit in the last few years, the prices of everything rising. Well, what it actually is the value of the dollar falling. If you're concerned about the US dollar falling even more in value, if you're concerned about the stability of the banking system, or if you're concerned about the ever-expanding US national debt, you can invest in physical precious metals. These assets have never gone to zero in 6,000 years. Simply call 419-490-5295. I'm a Miles Franklin precious metal broker. Miles Franklin has been in business for over 30 years, with no complaints ever registered. Simply give me a call and we'll discuss your needs. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about going to a school that focuses more on trades than, just your traditional, getting a traditional, business degree or whatever. It was, I think, in our interview you did with Father Mitch Pacwa on EWTN, where you, correct me if I'm wrong on this statistic, but the median income of electricians is higher than the median income of your average college graduate. Is that correct? Because that just kind of blows away this idea that, if you're focusing on a trade, you're not going to be making as much.
Oh, absolutely. For electricians and for plumbers, they will always out-earn the average college graduate in terms of just looking at the average tradesman of the 5 major construction trades. So carpentry, HVAC, masonry, electrical, and plumbing. They're going to have a higher net worth than the average college graduate until their mid-50s on average, or based upon a median. So that is, quite a shocking or change in the statistic. But of course, to just say college graduate is pretty wide gambit, right? You're comparing everybody from, somebody that got a degree in classics to the person that got a degree in engineering, right? And so one thing that, to share this, when I did finish my undergraduate, I did so in classics and historical philosophy, and all these brilliant guys were graduating with me. I was just so impressed with them, and they had no idea what to do afterwards for work. And I just thought, this is devastating. It's devastating on a number of fronts. And I bring this up because obviously the guys in the humanities that are studying humanities are worse off, right, than those who have this quasi-vocational path in college, like the hard sciences, right? Not all the hard sciences, of course, but some of them. And I thought this is a real shame for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a shame for them personally, right? They've learned all these beautiful truths, like what it means to make human life most flourishing, and yet they can't actualize it because they don't have any money, right? That's a shame. But also there's this real problem that they have no way in which to instantiate in the world the truths that they've learned. Right? I mean, it's like they're thinking all these great thoughts by themselves, but they can't really share it unless they become a teacher, which is great, right? But it seems like that can't be the only outcome for the classics major, right? Is that there has to be a way in which to bring into the world, manifest the beautiful things that you've learned, right? And I do believe, really quite sincerely, and this is probably actually just a very obvious point historically as well, is that what you believe changes the way you build. And I'm not just saying like that you finally find a plumber that's honest and can give you a clean bill, but actually like his work is going to be different. I mean, to give you the extreme case, I mean, just look at the way in which the Middle Ages built their churches versus the way that we do, right? Even compare them to their houses, which were, often with stone that's still standing today versus the way that we're stick framing today, that where we have a longevity for a house that's between 50 and 100 years, right? And if it is structurally sound for that period, it's probably not aesthetically sound for that same period. If it's still standing after 100 years, you might want to tear it down because it's just so ugly, right? And so that's a big, that I use that as an extreme case, right, to demonstrate what you believe changes the way that you build. But I think there's something about the ivory tower today and how it's designed is that it locks up these beautiful truths and doesn't let them out into the world. That makes people bitter and callous against college in a new way, right? Where you think that this isn't worthwhile, when in fact, actually, those truths were very worthwhile. It's just that we need a conduit by which that they begin to transform our social order.
I feel like in so many areas of life, like so many different people know all these different truths, right? But then just putting it all together is so difficult. I mean, you look at the medical arena where we're focused on, prescribing drugs and all this different things instead of just, oh wait, how do we make people healthy? Like, how do we prevent these conditions from, coming up? How do we give people good food to eat and all that stuff? It's just such a backwards way of thinking something of all these things because people are so specialized nowadays. They're just thinking of this one tiny, they're, going to operate on this one tiny part of your ear and that's all they know about it. It's like, what in the world? It's so people are not looking holistically. So
yeah. Or even just like what's in front of them, I mean, to kind of take a, to take a line that RFK has made so famous now is that we think about like environmental safety and upkeep in terms of numbers. I mean, you're like counting carbon. It's like, are you kidding me? Can we just not see if the leaf is green or not? Like, are the whales dying or not? It's like, let's just cut through the dissembling and take a better look at reality. And for whatever reason, our reasons, we're just very bad at doing that today.
Yeah. And I guess, could you bring our kind of run through for our viewers, what does St. Joseph the Worker teach a student, right? And then how does, as a student comes out of the college, how does that change their life going forward, right? If you look at someone who just, went to, some other college, got a, business degree or whatever, or someone who goes through St. Joseph the Worker, how are they better to take on the world spiritually, take it on intellectually, and also take it on physically by actually engaging in their job?
Yeah, great. Well, let's work backwards on that from physical to intellectual. So, we're certainly trying to bust up the model of higher education. We're also busting up the model for trade schools as well, all in one nice little package. So if you go to a trade school today, you're going to study your one trade, and it's going to be pretty good training, right? You're going to know about plumbing very well, but you're not going to know the rest of the house very well that you're building. You're not going to know, your math for water pressures, but you're not going to really understand what floor joists are for, right? And how they work. And so the first year of our program is what we like to call the anatomy of a house. It's understanding the total logic of a building and how each part fits together in a whole, so that we no longer have to go to the job sites and see that the HVAC tech cut right through those floor joists to get his duct work in, which actually happens frequently. And so that is the first thing that we're going to see. So we want to ensure that our students understand how their specifications really do aid the holistic build, so that they not only don't get into the other builders' ways, but find superior ways in which to actually instantiate what they're doing into the home or into the building. So kind of just from a very practical standpoint, that's one thing. We also want to ensure that our students understand what the nature of building is all about as well. So there's an incredible amount of just hands-on training, figuring out how to do things. We also want to ensure that they understand why they're doing that as well. And so that's not just understanding the components and their structures, the chemical compositions of the things that they're using, which is a very integral part to our curriculum, but also why to build what you're building. What's the history and philosophy of building itself, understanding the right patterns of a house, what a pattern of a neighborhood or even a city should be, so that they have not only this 1 foot vision into what they're doing, but also a 10,000 foot vision as well. And they may never have a chance or an opportunity in their life to be able to design an entire neighborhood, let alone a city. But those occasions do come up, and we want to ensure that they, at least if they even find themselves on those job sites, that they might be able to whisper in the ear of either the GC or the PM or even the investors of how to do this, or they come up with that themselves. So those are all integral parts of the curriculum that I find very exciting and actually truly revolutionary in terms of trade school. In terms of college and the liberal arts education, we do make the assumption that most of our students are going to be laity. They're not going to end up being priests. They're not going to end up, taking vows in a convent either. And so what is it that the laity are supposed to do? And here I'm speaking very much from my Catholic vantage, that the role of the laity, according to the church, is to sanctify the social order, the temporal order, And what is that? Well, it's really all the things that the friar gives up. The friar takes a vow of poverty, while we laity engage in profitable economic activity. The friar takes a vow of chastity while we get married and have children, and the friar also takes a vow of obedience when we rule the political order. And so if those are the things that we laity are supposed to sanctify, to raise up, and to work on, then those are the things that we also need to study, those being family life, economics, and politics. So that is the 3 pillars of our curriculum as well. And they're not so much how-tos as they are, again, kind of more theoretical studies of work, family, and politics. You can think about it in a certain sense, like if your job is to go out and build these worlds, then it's kind of like going off and trying to drive somewhere. But if you haven't studied the map first, then you're pretty foolish to just put your foot on the pedal, right? You need to figure out where you are and where you're trying to go before you start driving. And that's what I think of as the intellectual life as well, is that if you're human and human life has a definite purpose to it, then you got to figure out what that purpose is and really your particular paths to perfection. If in the lay life it is work, family, and politics, then you got to figure out what those are about and what they are for, so as to be able to go off and engage in that well. So we start, our curriculum, kind of the foundations of all theological knowledge with scripture and tradition. We also have a rhetoric class to be able to learn how to transform things learned to things then taught. And then it progresses all the way up into courses such as social doctrine, American founding, politics and family, economic history, throughout the time that you're a student here at the College of St. Joseph.
Now, for our viewers who are obviously of the age that I guess what age range are you typically looking for people to apply, and kind of who is going to be the best fit? And I guess we can then discuss kind of some maybe pointers also for those who might, our viewers watching who love this idea, but then also are like, well, I already got my business degree or marketing degree. Well, how do I change my life now to have it be more holistic? But I guess first off, what is kind of the age range? Is it, traditional age ranges or also older?
That's the majority of our students are coming right out of high school, but we do have a full range, from 18 to 30 years old for this inaugural class. And certainly we find that the age, more time outside of college, more time you have maturing, it's certainly going to be on your side when you sit down to begin to study again. It's those years of work and even past study is only going to enhance your ability to learn better. And because you can be financially stable during your time here at the college, it's not like you're really getting too far behind either. So we were keen to consider any application, and we really look at the quality of the applicant rather than the quantity of their age.
What would be your advice to people, who have already gone to college, right, or who are very specified? Someone maybe like me who, a lot of their work, pretty much all my work is just in front of a computer, right? We're doing these podcasts, we're, selling precious metals here and stuff. How do we make our lives more holistic? How do we focus on, the intellectual, the physical, right? And also the spiritual? How do we hit all those components and not individually, but really have them tie together?
Yeah, great question. I find that everything hinges upon how strong are your friendships, and that we don't really know in America how to have strong friendships. We'll talk about our buddies and love hanging out with them. You might go get a beer with them or have a cigar or whatever, or you go on runs with them, whatever that thing might be. But how much does your life fundamentally change if they are not around, right? Because we have this problem. I think it's a problem in America where we live in this cash nexus where getting from point A to point B always includes some dollar amount in between. And we've started to take that monetary mindset and apply it even to our friendships, where you think about paying back your friend for gas or lunch. And I just think that's absolutely insane. And that is not the marker of a mature man who can pay his own bills, but a very immature man who doesn't really have close friendships. That is, I think, a substantial problem that we're looking at, and one thing that does begin to retard our growth into true human flourishing and maturity, insofar as we don't actually have the capability to give ourselves over and to receive the gift of another. And so I think developing both good intellectual habits as well as new physical skills are ways that give you more occasion to give yourself to another. So you're never going to be a great master carpenter, perhaps. Maybe you will. That would be wonderful. But even to be able to make the gifts that you're giving, or to lend a hand, so that if something goes wrong at your buddy's house, you just say, hey, I do know how to do that. You don't need to call a plumber. I can come over and give you a hand. That's the way in which that you've actually used your new skill, not only to be more well-rounded and develop yourself, but actually to utilize being well-rounded for its total purpose, which is friendship, right? And so I think those are, if we have those as the lodestars of really that as the lodestar of friendship, then you're asking yourself, well, what are all the different things in my life that I can do and change to really help my friends and better them as well? And I certainly think that intellectual life, having a regularized and regularized routine of study is certainly going to help elevate your mind and the things that you're thinking of, and to be able to share those well with your loved ones is really essential, because those are the things that are going to fundamentally change the vector of your life.
I mean, I guess that's orienting your life to its ultimate purpose, right? I mean, love God and love neighbor. The first two most important things in life, and if we're correctly oriented, then all those other things will fall into place, it seems like.
Exactly. I mean, Christ says, have I not called you friends, right? I mean, that is what we're aiming towards, is that proper participation with him in a way that we really even don't know or haven't been able to do in recent years with our real friends, with our friends here, physically here. And that proper ordering and proper relationship with God, ability to self-give needs to be right, so that we might be able to do that better with those around us. And it also just makes life way more fun, because that's actually what we're supposed to be doing. So I hope it doesn't come across as highfalutin or theoretical or something. I mean, it's just going to make us happier.
Well, I don't think it's highfalutin or theoretical, because as you've shown with your college, it's actually putting this into practice. And I think that's so good. And you talked about how it's important to, what was it that you said near the beginning of the interview, where you were talking about how, people get a humanities degree and then they have no way to actually put it into practice. They have all this good knowledge, but there's no way actually to share it with people. And it's like, that seems to be what St. Joseph the Worker does, is, you get the knowledge and then have an actual way to share it with people, and I guess to make friends that way as well. But I guess if people are interested in learning more, they can go to your website. And where's that going to be for people to, check into the college more?
Yeah, well, come visit us in Steubenville, Ohio, actually, first and foremost. I mean, our website is great too, collegeofstjoseph.com. But we're starting to develop in this downtown, this dilapidated downtown of a Rust Belt city, picking up the old historic buildings here that are really quite grand and wonderful. And sadly, some of them are falling apart, but they make for great before pictures, and it gives our students some marvelous jobs to do, restoring and revitalizing these buildings, and also helping us do that for the town itself. So it's something fun to come and see as well. So, Leslie, you need to come out one of these times, and I'll show you around.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to visit. I mean, Steubenville, Ohio, I used to live in Northwest Ohio, and I can't believe I never went to visit Steubenville, Ohio. But the story is just incredible, how it seems like there's just like this huge Catholic community building, and it's becoming really a Catholic city. Speaking of, putting God and a friendship first, I mean, that seems to be, I mean, tell us a little bit about that. How has Steubenville transformed since you started living there?
Well, when you say Catholic city, it makes people think about like a cult, or that we were all coming here doing the same thing for the same reason. In a certain regard, I guess that's true, but it's not like a planned city or a planned town. I've noticed that those don't really work out all that well and often fall apart, in large part because you're putting the authority of the household underneath this other authority of another lay structure that can easily fall apart. But what's happened here historically is that it was once this booming mill and mining town that employed around employed quite a number of people. The population was about 40,000 at one point in Steubenville, Ohio, and then those mills were outcompeted by those in China and India, and the population just plummeted. We're waiting for the new census numbers, but we're around 18,000 now. So that's a significant exodus. And of course, it's principally brain drain that we've seen. And that's inclusive of the government bringing in somewhere around the ballpark of 5,000 people to live in Section 8 housing here. So it's a really quite an interesting dynamic to look at, kind of middle America being here. Now, right as that was happening, you found this great rise of Franciscan University, which is just up the hill from us here also in Steubenville. And that began to very organically bring quite a number of Catholics here who were looking around at downtown and saying, maybe we should do something about that. And so we have some great leaders here who kind of took the risk first, and Mark Nelson and Mark Barnes saying, what could we do here? Could we revitalize this town? And the college gets to be a pretty exciting part of seeing the physical facelift of these old historic streets.
That is fantastic. And just to hear more, I mean, I know you've been on Pints with Aquinas many times and Matt Fred, and it's just hearing about that story of Steubenville and what it's become is just amazing. I guess it's really the spirit of St. Joseph the Worker is really alive there, really revitalizing the industry there, right? Making things with your hands, really building up this city again. It's so inspiring there. So anyways.
When you have very little, except for God and one another, it makes for a pretty good foundation by which to build everything else. And certainly when you don't have money to spend freely on fixing things up, it does force you to be a little bit more creative. And that certainly has its own stresses, but we're having fun trying to strategize our way through.
Well, Jacob, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, thanks so much for the conversation. I appreciate it.